Beyblade. A game turned sport, turned hobby, turned business for some.
Oh, buy this, you won't regret it.
Buy this one.
Yeah, and due to its longevity throughout 20 years on TV, we're bound to encounter all kinds of gimmicks. Some of them are useful, just like the burst stoppers were. Useful like the dash drivers too, which I'm not sure count as a gimmick. And what about the projectile gimmick from Phoenix? It was introduced in the manga, then brought to life on TV, and of course, on the Beyblade themselves. But of course, there are other gimmicks that just fail. I will be taking a look at a few of these Beyblade gimmicks that, for lack of a better word, are a little and there's definitely not a lack of them. As you pointed out in one of my recent posts, can you name any useless Beyblade gimmicks? But this is a little bit different because these gimmicks actually backfired and didn't actually do what they intended to do. A perfect example of this is the bound gimmick found on Genesis Valtryek, or Genesis Valkyrie if you're into manga. Right? Manga, or even no, I guess it's still in the show too. So if you're into watching Japanese versions and getting the Takratami base. Whatever. This is by far one of the most complained about gimmicks throughout Beyblade. It was introduced in Beyblade Burst Evolution, and it features a layer, which in theory should be able to repel attacks from the same spin Beyblades, as we see in the show. Now this is by having a spring-loaded layer that can partially rotate slightly once hit. In theory, it should be able to get a boost from the stadium, as shown in the anime. And with enough force, would it be able to easily burst its opponents? We know how that turns out. And that's because, as a lot of you know, in practice, it makes Valkyrie or Valtryek more susceptible to being burst itself. Now this makes most bladers believe that the bound gimmick itself, was never actually good. Takratami has learned a lesson from this though, which is one thing I admire from the company itself. Because the newest Beyblade to have a bound gimmick, Gatling Dragon, can effectively use the gimmick and not self-burst. At least, not that I have seen anyways. But I do think it's because of the dash driver that comes included with Gatling Dragon. It also has bigger teeth and a stronger spring that effectively does what we all wish Genesis Valtryek would do. In Beyblade Burst Evolution, there were loads of gimmicks introduced, so I'll stay within this season for the next gimmick that, really backfired. Now that's of course the rollers. Wow, who would have thought that putting wheels on a Beyblade layer would have been a good idea? Who would have thought that putting wheels or even one wheel on the bottom of rotating spin top would create more power?
Hey guys, I have an idea for the greatest gimmick of all. No other Beyblade will be able to hit this Beyblade because it has wheels on it.
Okay, but in order to make this not OP, we just gotta make those rollers tiny as. This is by far one of the most useless gimmicks ever, and quickly backfires on Kinetic Saturn. Both Kinetic Saturn and Cursed Saturn, or Satan, were cursed with this gimmick. Kinetic Saturn itself has two sets of wheels, some on the layer and some on the driver itself. Now, not only do the wheels on the driver hinder wind resistance, create friction or scraping when on the tornado ridge, the upper rollers do nothing for performance. Now, okay, so if you've been on the channel for a while, you might know that I've made a video in slow motion seeing that the rollers actually get grazed by another Beyblade, as you can see here on the screen. Now, this isn't proof of it being effective though. It proves that the rollers don't actually roll as they get hit from another bay. Moreover, the biggest downfall for Saturn is the fact that the first thing to break is these rollers themselves. Like, what the f? It really doesn't make sense to me. Now, this does remind me of one of the most successful Beyblade gimmicks introduced, which later was made into trash by Takratami. And that's the free spin gimmick.
I wonder what it can do.
So the free spin gimmick layer was introduced with Tempest Wyvern, and like I mentioned, it was an actually OP layer to have, and not allowing any pesky left spin Beyblades to spin steal from the layer. A simple and elegant solution which got trashed in its Super King or Sparking season of Beyblade Burst. If you're not aware or don't really watch the show, let me explain. Jet Wyvern was released in 2021 as a single layer Bey purchase. Since its inception, bladers feared the free spin gimmick, due to its effectiveness. But this time around, bladers around the world were surprised, and that's because this gimmick was made useless by its ratcheting feature. Yeah, it's no longer free spinning, as the outer layer only rotates freely counterclockwise, then locks up if rotated clockwise. Theory goes that this was made in order to actually effectively spin steel from left spinning Beyblades. Does it work though? In practice, hardly. Due to its just driver, Jet Wyvern quickly became a lost cause. It's a Beyblade combo that will likely sit with your collection, gathering dust due to its shitty performance overall from all the parts together. Definitely a sad way to end a Beyblade's fame. Which brings me to the next gimmick that may surprise you being in this list, and that's the rubber gimmick, if it can be considered that. As we just saw, just because you have rubber on your layer does not mean you're going to be winning every battle. Fafnir fans are no stranger to this effect, as rubber can be a double-edged sword. Now this is because it all depends on the amount, the location, and the type of rubber that is used on the layer. In the Fafnir family, we have it all. A different position, a different composition, and different amount of rubber on different evolutions. Some say that the Vanish layer is the best one, and this is confirmed in a community post I recently asked you guys. For me, the best rubber is soft, like with Drain Fafnir, and Geist Fafnir, at least when speaking of the TT version. Wizard Fafnir has a stronger rubber, which does allow it to spin steel, but it makes it susceptible to self-KO. Not only that though, when it comes to battling a same spin Beyblade like Bahamut or Longinus, the use of the rubber becomes a hazard to itself. This is because the impact of another Beyblade can easily cause a burst finish. By far, the worst use of rubber on Fafnir, for me anyways, is on the Mirage layer. There's just not enough of it, and the rubber feels tough too. I really just don't trust Mirage Fafnir for spin stealing, and believe me, I've tried. In this video, I heated up the rubber to perhaps make it more sticky. If you follow the link below, you'll find a video for the results. It's called Free de la Cheater. But what is the best rubbered Fafnir in your opinion anyways? One of the more counterintuitive gimmicks that we all thought was ideal ends up not working at all, and that's the anti-burst feature. No, I'm not talking about burst stoppers though. Those were good in the Cho-Z or Turbo season. Nor am I talking about the Mugen Lock beys. Those are some of my favorite. I'm talking about the anti-lock features, like with Heaven Pegasus, Dread Bahamut, and even World Spriggan. So yeah, the idea is good, but the execution of the gimmick is what makes them so impractical. And I get it, because if it was easy to engage this gimmick, it'd be nearly impossible to burst them in battle. I'm no math whiz, but I know that the chances of you hitting the little triggers that activate the anti-burst mechanism are so slow, like 1 in a million. It may as well never happen. But that's not all though, because I've saved the best for last. A gimmick that backfires so much that people just decided to get rid of it altogether. Now that's the Protrusions. So gimmicks like Variant Wall from Variant Lucifer, and even Glide Rock Devore, or even Berserk Rock Devore, in which both of these beys sit at opposite sides of the spectrum. Variant's gimmick is such that it makes it nearly impossible to use because of the pink tongues, or whatever the heck you call them. They scrape should you tilt your launch ever so slightly. Rock Devore's gimmick, on the other hand, barely ever comes out through battle, and to my knowledge, they don't do a thing. Now, just for fun, I'm gonna include one more Beyblade in this list, and that's of course Greatest Raphael. He's particularly in this category because the basket handles, as I see them, are so easy to break and hardly do anything performance-wise anyways. It's a gimmick that really backfires, making it easy to burst. But really, some of the worst gimmicks aren't on the layers themselves. They're on forge discs, drivers, and okay, even some whack base stadiums released by Hasbro. But really, what do you think the worst gimmick on a Beyblade is?